Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. All right, another crazy time. More unprecedented events here in the United States. We're always having unprecedented events. Eddie, if you wouldn't mind, if you could turn down the music, please, sir. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody in the chat. Hello, Stevie Cakes. Hello, SB. Hello, Debbie Brady. It's good to see you. The moderators are in the chat, so to keep everything nice and clean. Now, throughout this show, if you have any questions during the stream, just go ahead and put the word question first, and then put your question that you would like to ask about real estate. Sometimes I'll ask, if somebody will ask something personal, and I will answer that sometimes, but mostly we'll just stick to real estate. Today, we're talking about what the Fed has been warning about the housing market. And we're going to be talking about a company that's building affordable homes, but there's a catch. If you guys watched my if you watched my last short that I did here on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. But it's very interesting, and I want to get your take on it because I have a take on it that I want to make abundantly clear. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about something the Realtor.com was talking about as far as interest rates. And we have those 3 articles to cover, and we will discuss anything you want to talk about as far as real estate related topics. So without further ado, let's talk about what Jerome Powell had to say, because, Jerome, he's made some mistakes over the years. I put a poll out there. If you're on YouTube, you can see the poll. I asked you what you thought about the Fed and what they have been doing for the last, I don't know, what is it, 5-7 years, something like that. So anyways, the Fed raises the alarm over deterioration in the housing market. Here's what that means for the hopeful home buyers. So here's the thing, though. I mean, he makes it sound like this is an epiphany. Like, oh, the housing market is deteriorating. Dude, where the hell have you been for the last 5 years? Did you just now catch a wind of that? Or you just making a claim about it? I don't know. Anyways, says the housing market is in a slump. Oh, he was more worried about the fact that people aren't buying houses. And the Federal Reserve has taken notice. Notes from the Fed meeting on September 1st highlighted concerns about the weakening job market along potential housing deterioration. And I always said home prices would not drop until when? When the job market starts looking like crap. And now that the job market's looking like crap, sure enough, home prices started dropping. You're also seeing foreclosures start creeping up in some areas as well. As a result, the cut the federal funds rate by a quarter a point. That means that the benchmark interest rate is now at 4.25%. But that does not mean mortgage interest rates at 4.25. Just know that they have come down a little bit, but not at 4.25. Okay, Eddie, you can scroll down. I love that I was right, though, because people were arguing with me when home prices would dump, and that's what I said when the job market tanks. Despite the slowdown in the housing activities, Jerome Powell reiterated October 13th that the central bank wouldn't directly intervene in the mortgage market. Of course they can't. The Federal Reserve officials noted that job gains were slowing and unemployment was ticking up. And here's what that means for the housing market, whether you're planning on buying or hoping to sell. Many homeowners are struggling, according to Adam, as the September foreclosure filings were 20% higher than the year prior on a national scale. 1 in every 3,997 housing units had a foreclosure filing. As for this home building industry, professional builders are now facing high borrowing costs. Renovation activity has slowed, and recent cut will take it some time to trickle down on the broader economy, according to Barron's. Now, there's something I wanted to point out to you. The tariffs have now increased on building materials like soft lumber, cabinetry, some plumbing, things. They have increased not by a little bit, like 50%. So if you were like thinking that you were going to get a cheaper, newer built home in the next, 4 to 6 months, you can pretty much kiss that goodbye. So according to this National Association of Realtors press release from September, sellers might be in for a rebound, but just not quite yet. Home sales have been sluggish over the past few years due to the elevated mortgage rates and low limited inventory. However, mortgage rates are declining and more inventory is coming on the market, which should boost sales in the coming months. I'm saying there's going to be no boost in sales unless we see a drastic drop in mortgage interest rates. You can give me your opinion. All told, 800,000 new single-family houses were sold in August of 2025, according to the seasonally adjusted estimates from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD. That was a 20% above the July 2025 figure of 664 units. 664,000 units. Although the boost in sales is a good sign for some recovery, it's only one of the puzzle pieces. Tell me about it. While the Fed cut rates in September, a decrease in borrowing costs isn't necessarily the silver bullet to retrieve the housing market. Many homeowners are locked into cheap pre-pandemic or pandemic era mortgages, which have contributed to the housing supply problems, but making it difficult to move overall. Fed research attributes most half of U.S. consumers dropped their mobility from 2021 to 2022 to get the mortgage lock-in effect. Some people call it the golden handcuffs. They give it a catchy phrase, just meaning that they got a 2.5%. What's the incentive for them to move or move up or move down even when you have an interest rate so incredibly low? So if jobs continue to fail, right, and we still have problems with the jobs numbers, I don't know that would be enough of incentive for a lot of people to either A, move, or B, buy a house. Because if you remember in 2008, I mean, the mortgage rates started coming down and they were still trying to incentivize people to buy and nobody was buying. So if people feel uncertainty in not just the housing market, but the market in general, I don't know if that will work, but we'll see. First-time homebuyers may feel squeezed the most. A recent Fed board speech by Governor Kugler highlighted that higher rates disproportionately reduce purchases by lower-income households, which pushes homeownership further out. The fact that the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield is more closely tied to the fixed-rate mortgages that the federal funds rates, according to CNBC. While it has dropped somewhat, it's still a rate that remains too high. Yeah. Yep. If you're in the market for a house, you may want to be stuck with a low interest pandemic era loan, or perhaps houses feel like they're too pricey, and they are. In most areas, houses are too high. But I was looking at one housing market. I'm off the topic, but I was looking at one housing market that actually has affordable housing, but they have limited supply because so many people are locked into that rate. And there is first-time homebuyers that would like to get in, but they're having a hard time finding houses that people are willing to sell. And it happens to be an area that doesn't have a lot of new construction. So it's interesting how each market behaves. Or they're waiting for the mortgage rates to fall further before jumping back into the housing market. But some experts say if you have the means, you should not wait for mortgage prices to fall. They always say that. They always say that. It would take a drastic drop in housing prices to make homes feel affordable to many major U.S. cities. And the future of the mortgage rate could be consequently elevate that in recent times remain uncertain. So yeah, in certain areas, if you saw if interest rates dropped at in the 4s, some housing markets, I mean, all that's going to do is raise the prices of the houses, right? It's not going to make people pay less, because they feel like they're paying less because they got a lower interest rate. So, it says, if you have some flexibility, you may want to widen your search neighborhoods with rising inventory, especially in cities in the Midwest and South. Zillow estimates houses can be affordable even with a 6.7% interest rate. Think about it like this. More housing supply can mean the less market competition for properties and more power for the seller to the buyer. Once you set your sights on the property, it's always best to practice to have all your documents ready, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we already know this. If you're going to buy a house, make sure you have all your documents together. The thing is, if you're looking to purchase a house right now, I want you to be there's housing markets in your brain that are okay, well, this is the top housing market because, it has high demand. So I want you to think about it. Why does it have high demand? When Eddie and I, because you guys know we're moving. And we were looking at certain areas, and I'm like, well, why are the houses so tight there? Like, why isn't there a lot of houses available there? And it was because the school districts are, more sought after. Eddie and I don't give two flying flips about the school districts, like that. We don't have children, we don't have school age children to worry about having the best school districts for our young kids. That isn't something that we're concerned about. So that already took that housing market off of our list, because we don't need to have that. We just want to find a nice, affordable place for our older children to live. And, we want there's other aspects of a housing market. And yes, the housing market there was a little tight, but not nearly as tight as the one with the better school district. But it's perfect for them because they're in college, it's perfect for them. And so like, that's what you have to do whenever you're, doing your search. Another thing too, is that, you may want to like talk to your lender about, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, to find out if there's any programs in your area for first-time home buyers, whether it's a grant from the state, or maybe you could get into, like in my area, I live outside of Baton Rouge, you might be able to be qualified for a rural development loan, and that will help you, especially with the down payment part of it, because you can finance up to 105%. Like think about those kinds of things when you're going to look for a house. To wait for mortgage rates to drop, we could be looking at another year and a half. And then when they drop, is the supply going to be there? So, I mean, you have to make these choices for yourself. Don't let any article or myself or anybody else push you into buying a house. Don't do that. I want to throw that out into the wind. I want to say hi to all the people on TikTok. If you guys don't know, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube. I'm sorry that you can't see the article on TikTok. The only way I'm able to do that is with some third-party software that I only can use on YouTube and Facebook. TikTok doesn't give me that ability. If they did, I'd be very thankful. So, all right.
But before you go to this, Savas says, hello, everyone from Pennsylvania on TikTok.
Oh, hello from Pennsylvania. Yes. That's where my kids are headed off to. Pennsylvania, here we come, right back where we started from. I have no idea if that's how the song goes, but I sing that all the time because it's in my brain. And once it's in my brain, I can't get it out. All right. Maddie says the Fed didn't cause the inflation that led to higher rates. That was the COVID stimulus. I will say this, though, and I do blame the Fed for keeping the rates too low for too long. We had unprecedented buying during that time. They knew what was on the horizon. That's their job. People like me who shouldn't know that the rates were too low for too long were saying the rates are too low for too long. If we as little people know that, and they're supposed to be the smartest people on the planet when it comes to the economy, they should never have kept the rates that low for that long. That's my personal opinion. Call me crazy. You can give me your opinion. All right. Charlton says, question, do you really fall for this? The Wall Street equity firms cause this, not the Federal Reserve. There's so many, you can't just pinpoint one thing. Whenever there's an economic collapse, they always say, oh, this was it. But there's always that may have been the catalyst. There was several other things that caused an economic disaster. Everybody likes to blame the 2008 housing crisis on one thing. They only want to say it was one thing, but it was several other things that made the whole economy just go to crap. It wasn't just housing. That was the biggest thing, but there was lots of other things that caused that issue. Yes. And I agree. Private equity is licking their lips right now. The increase in foreclosures for them is a big giant yay. They're so excited because what do they do? Well, just like what they did after the last financial crash. They went in and they scooped up as many foreclosures as possible, and they turned them into rental units. And this is right up their alley. And the reason they bought so much when the prices of homes were so high is because borrowing money was so cheap. Money was cheap. So they just kept buying houses, and they were buying them over asking price. They were buying them up as quickly as possible. And then there's a whole narrative of oh, they're dumping the houses. They're dumping the houses in places that have high insurance because they don't want to pay those insurance rates. But they're not dumping them in places where they know the insurance rates are going to go anywhere. They don't care. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. They're buying as much as they can. They are buying as much as they can. We're dealing with psychopaths that have stolen trillions of money and militaries and using propaganda, psychology, war games to divide us all against each other. And they are winning. Well, they will win is what they said. You know, I truly believe that when you play this game of us versus them or them versus us, and these people, you start looking at your neighbors and everything as the issue, then it clouds the real problem, right? I agree with you on that. And once that changes, once we stop pointing at each other, because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is your neighbor really controlling your finances? No, they're not. Your boss is, your corporation you work for, yeah. Your government is. Your government's raising your taxes. That's who we should really be pointing fingers at. And I agree with you on that. So Charlton says, I bought my first house in 1985 with a 38-year fixed rate mortgage. 6% mortgage. Eddie and I bought our first house in 2002. And we got a 7.5% interest rate. Our house cost us $135,000. And the whole time I thought, we overpaid for our house. We got screwed on our mortgage rate. I was so scared that we really made a huge mistake. And now looking back on it, I mean, people would beg for that right now. They would beg for it. FlukeMan22 said, a question. I have a theory. Politicians make squatters' right laws. Corporations pay squatters to squat to cause problems, to foreclose their properties, and politician gets a piece of the pie. I'm sure there's some of that. I have not physically seen something like that, but I'm sure that's possible. There's, every time I think, and this is a quote that I heard on TikTok, every time I think the government wouldn't do that, then I find out that's exactly what the government's doing. Yeah. And, I used to think that politicians were a lot smarter than they are. And it's not that they're smarter, they're more evil than I thought they were. And it doesn't matter, what letter they put behind their name. There's corruption and evil all the way around. I'm going to tell you a little personal story, a little off the track, but I worked in the affordable housing space here before the pandemic. And, they would have all these fundraising expeditions where they have politicians shaking hands. They would have all these balls, or you dress up and you have a luncheon and all this other stuff to raise more money to help the homeless problem throughout Baton Rouge, in the greater Baton Rouge area. To this day, not one house, not one building, and no facilities have been built for the homeless, but they sure do collect that money. And they certainly get their name in the paper during election season and shake hands, say they're going to really address the houselessness here in Baton Rouge. Never happens. You as soon as you start peeling back the layers of an onion, you realize how rotten it is inside. It's very discouraging. Noreen says, anyone have any issues with the video lagging or the video behind the audio? It's not you, Noreen. It's me. We've tried to reset the internet a couple times now. I don't know what the issue is, and it was too late to call the cable company to fix the whole process here. I tried to do it ahead of time. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's not you. It's me.
I'm actually a little behind on TikTok comments, so I apologize. Teresa on TikTok says, I know that song.
Oh, Teresa on TikTok knew that song, the Pennsylvania Here We Come, right back where we started from.
Okay. Says, actually, I heard there's a possible that Fed lowered the rates in 2 meetings between now and March.
So somebody is saying that they might lower the rates between 2 meetings in March. Here's the thing. So the 10-year treasury yield does not follow exactly what the Fed does. So if the Fed cuts the rate, that doesn't mean that the mortgage interest rates are going to follow suit. That being said, if they cut it more significantly and the banks feel confident and the investors feel confident in that, it could be possible that we see lower interest rates. I don't know how much more time. I'm interested to see who's going to be the next chair because, obviously the writing's on the wall. The Fed chair Jerome Powell's days are numbered. He's not going to be there at the end. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'd love to hear your theories. Do you think Jerome's going to get he's going to be pushed out? And we're going to get a new guy in there, and they're going to cut the Fed rate a ton. And what do you think is going to happen to mortgage rates right after that? I want to get your theory on that.
Forget mortgage rates. What happens to the dollar? Just let's go there.
Yeah. Well, no, but this is about real estate, Eddie. It's about real estate.
I realize that, but the dollar also means what the cost of those things are going to be, because it's not going to be worth anything. So, I mean, you can cut, never mind. I won't get into the interest rate cut, but Charleston does say it's my fault, which
Charlton says it's your fault. Okay.
Teresa also said, yep, so many empty units in big cities.
There are empty units in big cities, and I want to touch on this a little bit because a lot of those empty units are owned by corporations, and they use those empty units as a tax deduction. It's a depreciating asset. They say that they've actively tried to find residents to live in there, and they couldn't find anybody, and they use that as a tax deduction. Lots and lots of corporations do that. It actually pays them better to not have anybody in there. And I don't think they should be allowed to do that, but I don't make the rules. So Proud Liberal 24 says America will never do anything for the homeless, only shelters. Depressing. But let's talk about something that's even more, I think, dystopian and depressing. Okay. So to address the affordable housing crisis, in this investor's ultimate wisdom has come up with a new plan where you can get houses as low as $150,000. So you're like, wow, that sounds fantastic. And some of them in really good cities like Austin, Texas. And now there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? What is the catch, you're going to ask? Well, you may own the house and you even may pay that house off in, let's just say 30 years. You'll never, ever, ever own the land. The land is owned by the developer itself. You own the house, you rent the land. Sound familiar? It should. Sounds very similar to mobile home parks, right? Currently, this company, Jubilee, I saw this on somebody's TikTok page and I started looking into it. Jubilee is not currently owned by a private equity firm yet. We all know that private equity loves mobile home parks because there's no real regulation when it comes to owning those and raising rents on the land itself. They do not have the same kind of protections as a renter renting an apartment. So they scoop them up. So I think they're setting this up so that private equity would buy them out, I'm sure. And they're doing it in the most expensive housing markets, making it appealing, thinking that you own a house. You may even sign a 99-year lease, but they don't give any kind of explicit explanation of what happens to that house if you were to pass away. They don't tell you what happens to the payments. I want to make it very clear to anybody that's considering doing this that your loan that you would get on this is not a typical FHA or VA or even even a traditional conventional loan. The likelihood of you being able to do a home equity line of credit in the future for something like this it's not the same. It would not be the same. And you'd be getting something called a chattel loan, meaning that the house itself is that's what you're mortgaging. So your interest rates on that are going to be a lot higher than it would be for a traditional home. The trade-off for a lot of people is, yeah, but it's my home. I can do whatever I want to it. But that also means that you have no rights to the land itself. So that property owner, that landowner can tell you anything at any time, and you could be evicted from your own home that you've paid off. This happens to people in mobile home parks all the time. There are people that have paid off homes in mobile home parks. Private equity comes in. They say, hey, we're going to turn this into an apartment complex to house more people. And these people who have a paid off home have paid their land lease on time for years and years and years. There's no leg for them to stand on. And when you're doing something like this, it's no different. Just like with mobile homes, it's very difficult to move a mobile home. They call them mobile because they came in on a truck that mobily. But once they're in place, they're almost impossible to move, or they're very expensive to move. And once you move them, a lot of your insurances won't even cover you anymore. Now you're really chained to this house. You're really in trouble with this house if they own the land, because you can't even put it on the open market. You can't put it on the MLS. Most real estate markets will not allow for you to list a house unless it's attached to land. I think it is a horrible idea. And of course, they're always, trying to beef it up like, oh, we have all these amenities. We have tennis courts and pickleball. And oh, look, there's a dog park. That doesn't mean crap. I mean, honestly, those are nice, but it's not the thing that's going to save you in the long run when you have you need to take equity out of your home. And then you won't be able to, because it's got this weird kind of land lease loan thing going on. I'm just saying, if anybody brings it up to you, tell them don't do it. Tell them don't do that. Don't do it. Jubilee
Savas over in TikTok says, just like an HOA.
It's worse than an HOA. The HOAs, I've been saying the HOA management companies have been being taken over by private equity firms, and then the private equity firms start finding residents for all sorts of crazy things. That's how they make their money. And then they can obviously foreclose on people if they accrue too many fines. There is some headway on that, though. There are some states that are putting more actions against HOAs where they can't foreclose on somebody's property because they have fines for not painting their mailbox. So they're starting to catch up finally on that. I mean, not everybody, but squeaky wheel gets the oil. So you're gonna have to start putting some letters out there when it comes to that. But this is worse in the fact that an HOA is like a third party that can make your life miserable. This is your actual house and they own the land. So somebody could pull up to your driveway one day and say, you know what, we're going to bulldoze this over because the developer said so. And there's nothing you can do about it, because there's no regulations on land leases, not like there is when you rent an apartment or when you own a home or when you actually have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I bet you they have their own in-house financing too. And I would guarantee those interest rates, let's just say that a 30-year fixed is at 6%. I bet you those are at 8 or 9, because that's what chattel loans are. Chattel loans are 2% higher than the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Gross, huh? Jubilee, that's a name that's trying to sound happy when it's being 100% predatory. Bingo. It's predatory. It's predatory. They're feeding off people's want and need to buy a house, to own their own piece of real estate. It was the American dream that's been sold to me when I was a kid, sold to many generations. The dream to get married, start a family, get a house, do the whole 9 yards. And so many of these things that were sold to us as a bill of goods is now being brought back to us as a subscription model. You want to own a house? Well, you're going to have to subscribe to owning the land. You want to watch a movie? Oh, you can't rent it. You can't own it. You're going to have to subscribe to get it. And then at any time we can take it off of that subscription if we feel like it. They do it with all sorts of stuff. I saw somebody Toyota has this whole thing now. How you plug in your phone, you plug it in, and that way you can get the directions on your phone and it shows up on the screen. Well, in order to use that, you have to subscribe to their subscription plan in order to get navigation, and it won't play your your car radio or anything from your phone. And and even to see your oil pressure, you have to do another subscription. Each little thing, you see your tire pressure, you got to get subscribed to that. And it's a $5 charge per month. That's disgusting. I mean, we have turned a corner. I feel like I'm in a Black Mirror episode every time I turn on the television. I'm like, what other way can they take more money from us just for us to try to exist? And to me, I think that like water, electricity, food and housing should be regulated to the median income. And I'm a real estate agent, but these are essentials for people to survive. these are essentials for people to survive, but we will nickel and dime people to death. If you're not rich enough, then you can't afford it. Then you can't afford to live. Too bad. That's how we look at things. Not we, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Call me crazy.
You want one better?
What?
So if in those subscriptions, like to Toyota and also Samsung, I believe is doing this with their refrigerators, is that there will be playing commercials also.
Oh, so if you want to subscribe to some of this stuff, they'll play commercials. So you have to watch an ad in order to get your tire pressure.
I'm assuming there's levels to it. Like,
there's levels
like
to
the first level, you can get all your tire pressure, whatever, but you're going to hear commercials.
That was a Black Mirror episode. They literally had that. This woman needed to survive, right? She needed to survive. And in order to survive, like they couldn't afford this plan anymore. So she would be she was like a walking commercial, and then she didn't want to do it anymore. So she just kind of like gave up, and you can fill in the blank what I mean by that. So
what do I always tell you about that, by the way? Hollywood needs to stop giving
I know
to the future, because that's what happens.
And he says that Hollywood's giving them ideas, giving the evil corporations ideas because they can't come up on their own. So Lucy says America is over. The sooner you come to the realization, the sooner you will wake up and realize it's a new ball game. Save the children. They're the only thing worth saving. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I always think that whenever there is a tragedy, like just tragic times, there's always another side. It's like the pendulum swings, like the pendulum will go like this and it's just so incredibly crazy. And then all of a sudden it will swing this way. And then we kind of meet in the middle for a period of time. I'm thinking that maybe that will happen again. Somebody will get their comeuppance. I'm hopeful. I'm always going to remain hopeful. There's going to be something that makes it more fair, a more fair playing field. I could be wrong, but I have to live like that, or I wouldn't exist. I have to.
Teresa over on TikTok says, I want a manufactured house on my own land for retirement, and I'm concerned I will never get it. Sorry.
So if somebody on TikTok was talking about getting a manufactured home on their own land, and they'll never be able to afford it. Here is one thing I'm going to suggest to you. If you have a local credit union in your area or just local banks in your area, ask them where they take their foreclosed manufactured homes to. What auction house did they take them to? And this is pretty common here in the state of Louisiana. We have lots of credit unions and smaller banks that will finance manufactured homes. When people don't make their payments, they repo those. And since they had a chattel loan and they weren't attached to land, it's just the mobile home itself. So what you can do if you're looking for something on a budget is you can go to these auctions. You have to have cash in hand. I'm just letting you know that right now, but you can get a hell of a deal. Years ago, I had an investor go to one of those. He got one. I don't think it was ever lived in. I don't think it was. It still had all the tags inside the mobile home itself. We could never confirm or deny if it had ever been lived in, but he was able to get that for $5,000 and put it on a piece of land. So I would strongly suggest doing that, especially if you're going to pay cash. And then that would be one sense of security, especially if you're in your retirement, that all you would have to do is pay your land note if you hadn't bought that cash. So just a little helpful hint, little thing to help you along the way with your retirement, so you can get retired a little earlier. And that'd be nice. Brian says, I would never buy a house where I don't own the land. I would never buy. You're right. I would never do that. Never do that. Yep. Gamer G says, question. Have you seen the story in Texas where a woman got caught with a wraparound loan? It's crazy. What? All right, Eddie's going to pull it up. Wraparound transactions in Texas. A wraparound transaction is a form of creative seller finance that leaves the original loan and lien in place when a property is sold. The intention is to conveyance to the borrower that the subject is existing indebtedness, and it will be wrapped. It'll be wrapped. It involves creation of a new note lien, the wraparound note to the seller lender that is subordinate in existing debt. With a new wrap note will be secured by the new wraparound deed and trust. Takes place without advance approval by existing lender. I have never heard of this. This is new to me, and they're talking over my real estate head. This is lender talk. The wraparound indebtedness is to be distinguished from a wraparound indebtedness, which is existing note the seller's lender that the indebtedness that is being wrapped. That is like reading stereo instructions. That doesn't even make any sense. The wraparounds may not be done both residential and commercial transactions. It is possible to wrap more than one prior note, double wraps, and even triple wraps. The chapter deals exclusively with the residential wraparounds involving a single or prior note and lien. So what are they like? So basically what they're saying is that the new buyer has a note and the old buyer has a note. So the old buyer's mortgage isn't paid off, and then they have another mortgage on top of it. So it's like a second mortgage, but then the original homeowner still holds on to the house. Is that what I'm going to have to look into that, because that to me read like stereo instructions. I have
stereo instructions. Stereo instructions. I could put a stereo together. I couldn't put that together.
They said the same thing 3 times. I don't know what that is.
I still don't understand what a wraparound is. Like, it sounds like the seller has the loan and the new person buying has the loan.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me.
Double or triple.
Yeah. So each person has their own loan, but the original person is the one that originally owns it still, right? Is that what?
I guess. I couldn't find the article that Gamer C was asking about, but I decided to put up what is a wraparound because I thought maybe it would explain a little bit and we could kind of figure it out. I'm assuming, just like you, the first person owns it,
yeah,
but has a loan out for the second person, but also has a loan out for the first person.
The thing is that I've grown as I've grown older. I learned not to trust people as much as I did in the past. Like I was so naive as a young person. I really genuinely thought people had other people's best interests at heart. Oh, was I so stupid? But if there was something like that, like somebody said, "Oh, we'll just do a wraparound note with you," nope. I don't. I want to be the only one that has control. I have control issues too. So yeah, no, absolutely not. Not even if it was a family member. No way would I do that.
It almost sounds like Oprah Winfrey. You get a loan. You get a loan. You get a loan. Everybody gets a loan.
It says homes need to be not-for-profit center for these greedy, enslaving dirt bags. You know what? I agree. If you look at my channel, on the top of my channel, it says, everyone deserves an affordable home. And I truly believe that. I'm not saying everybody, needs to get a free house. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that everybody deserves a home that they can afford to live in. And we have gotten to the point that is beyond not affordable. Every time I turn around, insurance rates are going up on houses. Your insurance company lets you know that you need another rider on your insurance for all sorts of crazy stuff, whether that is plumbing, whether that is, brick, whether that is roofing. They're telling you to add more riders to your policy. And like even flood insurance is crazy, Oh, while we're talking about flood insurance, just real quick, I have a thing that this is one of those things. I don't think everybody deserves to get federal FEMA flood insurance. And the reason I'm saying that is that If you have 3 multi-million-dollar houses on the beach that are literally right where the waves are crashing, you know that you're taking on a responsibility of the fact that, the ocean's pretty dangerous. There's a lot of water there. You probably should find another place to live. But you know what? We allow everybody to get flood insurance. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Everybody can get flood insurance. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. All right. Question. You will own nothing and be happy. Go eat a bug. You know what? I've eaten some snails in my lifetime. I love me some escargot. Charlton says, question. Do you know at first only property owners could vote in the federal elections per the U.S. Constitution? I did know that. Women couldn't even have a bank account until 1973. I don't think they could own a house until 1980, unless your dad signed off on it. I put this Band-Aid on my finger, just playing around, and now it won't come off. Oh, the Boston Tea Party was over a 7% tax. I didn't know that either. You guys are teaching me some stuff today. I do love me some tea. That's what's in my cup. My big cup is tea.
If they only saw property tax and vehicle taxes.
There's so many politicians floating around the idea of getting rid of property tax. And I get the idea, because it's like, if you pay off your mortgage in 30 years, why do you have to continuously pay more property tax? Why can't you at least get a discount on that property tax after you've paid for 30 years? And it's whatever the government has assessed your value of your property. That's what you have to pay on. I don't know. It's like somebody said, you never really own your house, because at any time, if you don't pay those taxes, they can take it from you. And I realize that, you have to pay for roads and schools and fire departments and police departments, and those property taxes cover that. But after like 30 years, you don't have kids in school anymore. You don't have, I think there should be like a prize of you did a good job. You only have to pay half the amount now, Call me crazy. I know. What is happening in Japan and birth rate has dropped down to their level. Well, it isn't just Japan. It isn't just the United States. I mean, it's Italy, it's Germany. When life becomes more affordable, and what did they always tell us? What did our grandparents and their grandparents before that? If you can't afford to have kids, don't have them. Well, I mean, a lot of young people can't afford a house. They can't afford to live. They can't afford their insurance. And so they're opting not to have children. They did what they were told. And then you hear them saying, oh, younger people are not having kids anymore. It's this person's fault, instead of blaming the economy that they put them in. Lawnmower says, my new Samsung has an AI. It keeps saying, I can't do that, Dave. I can't do that, Dave. My name isn't Dave. Is it from that movie? Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal. Well, at least it's not calling you Hal. Proud Liberal 24 says, there are many affordable homes in the USA. Unfortunately, they are in locations where people don't want to live. I say a house for $32,000 in Cumberland, Maryland. No great job prospects there. Yes, and I've said this before as well. I have seen many areas. They're like, oh, in my area, you can buy a house for $125,000. And I'm like, yeah, but where are the young people supposed to work? Sure, if you had cash, you could live there, but you have to have a job. The only way that would work is if you were able to do you had like gig work where you were doing offsite, work, something work from home kind of job. But a lot of those work from home jobs are not 100% work from home. Like you have to go in the office like twice a month, or sometimes you have to go in, 2 times a week. So in order for that to happen, you got to live in a more expensive area because it's going to be too expensive for you to drive out there, every other day for your job. Some people don't think about it realistically, Hey, D-Jack, it's good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. I always see your comments pop up on the old YouTube. Thank you for being a part of the stream today. Beatrice says, if you sign a 99-year land lease, wouldn't you be protected for at least 99 years? My local Habitat for Humanity is doing a 99-year land leases to keep the property affordable, and they can be passed down. I don't know what this particular company, Jubilee, is doing as far as the land lease is concerned. I want you to understand, though, like Habitat for Humanity is doing it on a level of where they're trying to help people move up. Jubilee is doing it as a company trying to make money from people. So they know that there isn't as many protections for people that happen to live on land leases as there is for people that have homeowners, that the home loan is wrapped into the actual land itself. I'm just saying to be very careful. And if you're planning on doing something like this, take that paperwork to an attorney to have it looked over so you can have it explained to you what exactly happens. Because anything that's ever, as far as contracts are concerned, when it comes to home builders, apartment complexes, condo associations, all of those things, they're written in a way that it's never to protect the people that are buying into those developments. They're written to protect the builders, the condo associations, the apartment complexes, and basically strip as many rights from you as possible. You have federal and state protections when it comes to renting from a landlord. You have protections when you buy a house from a home builder. But when you're doing a land lease, there's nothing, not anything in most states that will protect you at any time if they decide to do something different with that piece of land. So I just wanted to make that clear. Okay. Maddie says, my understanding is that wraparound loans are used to get around non-assumable mortgages. If the original lender finds out they can foreclose. You got to read your mortgage documents. Some mortgages won't even allow you to rent the property out. And I've seen people get in trouble for that because they're like, oh, we're going to move to another state, but I don't want to try to sell this house. I'm just going to rent it out. And then all of a sudden, 9 months down the road, the mortgage company finds out about it because the electricity and everything else is put in somebody else's name. And then they can get in trouble for that because you're in default of your mortgage. So, as boring as your mortgage documents are, look into those. That whole wraparound thing seems like pretty sneaky deaky. I wouldn't do it. I need to talk to somebody from Texas to make my full commentary on it, because that is something that we do not have here in the state of Louisiana. I've never heard of that before. So I'm going to have to look into that a little more. Very interesting stuff. Who's on first says, it's not Pennsylvania, it's California. Here I come. Oh, here he goes. Sung. Okay. Why do I keep saying Pennsylvania, though? My parents must have sang that when I was young, because we were always going to visit my grandparents who were in Pennsylvania. So I think they sang it that way. All right. Brian says, I don't trust politicians not to go back to only landholders with having voice in government. Another reason I wouldn't buy a house without land. You know what? Like I said earlier, every time I think the government wouldn't do that. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. They would totally do that. This is about as political as I'm going to get. But if we could get rid of corporations giving money to politicians to get them elected and get them out of being able to advertise for politicians and solicit politicians and lobby politicians, if we could get corporations out of that, I think we'd be a hell of a lot better off. But again, I don't make the rules. Hal might have been the most accurately depicted screen personality of a sociopath to date. Yes. I always do that. Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal. Open the pod bay doors. I loved that scene. Kaladin 76 says houses are still too high in states like Oklahoma. Houses are priced like California, but with Oklahoma minimum wage. Doesn't make sense. You know what? It's very true here in Louisiana as well. I happen to live in an area that has a lot of plants and plant workers, and we had lots of homes that I would say before the pandemic, they would start about 87,000. Were they the best? Absolutely not. But they could all be fixed up and turned into something really nice. Those same houses that were before the pandemic around $87,000 are now like almost $300,000. Nothing happened to those houses to make them go up to $300,000. And so now when you're looking at houses in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, you're like, is that even meant for humans? Like, you're not 100% sure. We're starting to see a little bit more back to reality here. It isn't like a boomerang effect like some areas like Austin, Texas, for example. But I think home sellers needed a little bit of reality. I think home builders needed a little bit of reality. But I think builders are in tough shape right now because it costs so much more to build a house than it even did a year ago. Even more than it did 6 months ago. I have to tell you, because we talk about builder sentiment all the time. The builders, how do they feel? What is their feeling of what's going to be happening in the future? And the builder sentiment was up for the first time in a long time. And they say on the horizon, the reason they feel so optimistic about it is they're pretty confident that mortgage interest rates are going to come down and come down soon. So that was interesting to see. So question came in from Camp in Sasquatch. Says, question, anyone know how many tiny houses can be set up on 4 to 5 acres, tiny home co-op and planning? Okay, I'm going to give you the straight answer on this. It is going to be dependent on the county that you put those tiny homes in. Some areas will allow you to put as many as you want on 4 to 5 acres. Others will say you only can put, let's just say, 4 houses per acre. You're going to have to get with your zoning and planning commission right there in your area and tell them and show them exactly what you're going to do as far as the well, as far as electricity, as far as any other utilities. They may even tell you that for every 2 tiny homes, you can only have 1 well. So you just have to check with them because there's no like straight answer exactly what you can and cannot do as far as the acreage and how many like houses. Like here in my area, per 1 acre, you only can have 1 home, period, unless you have a special variance. 1 acre, 1 home. All right. Get the money out of politics and the morality, bankrupt, greed-driven monsters will go away. Yeah. Well, you know what, though? They'll always find a way to get their little grubby hands back in it, because policies make for money. And even if we were to say, oh, okay, you can't give money to campaigns anymore, and you can't advertise under a company name anymore, and you can't create these shell corporations for, even if you were to do that, they'd still find a way to make sure that certain legislation doesn't pass because they don't want to pay extra in taxes. They got more money than us. They'll always figure out a way to make it go their direction. No, pay the politicians more legally, and get them out of the wealthy interest lobbies. Yes. Yep. And don't allow them to invest in the stock market. My God. You know what? If you ever really want to play in the stock market, follow the trades of politicians, and then you'll be a millionaire. That's what you need to do. There's a guy who does that. He follows all the politicians' buys, and then he buys in. He's like, statistically, I should not be doing this well. I wonder why. I wonder why the politicians do so good in the stock market. Could be that they might have some inside information. Who knew? The numbers don't add up, no matter where you live, from New York to California. Are you talking about the increase in home prices or the amount of houses available? What doesn't add up? Tom says, looking at May for rates to lower and for the Federal Reserve to start buying more treasuries, which is more important for customer interest rates. You know what? That's funny that you say that. I have the same feeling. This is just between me, you, and the 284 people in the chat. But my parents are going to be selling their house. And I have predicted, because that's when I feel that interest rates are going to go down. And I do think there's going to be a temporary, like boost in the housing market where there's going to be a lot more interest and a lot more activity. Because I feel the same way you do. I feel the same exact way you do. But, I'm not putting that out into the universe. I'm not going to make a video on that because people will say, oh, you predicted that, blah, 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 blah. It's just how I feel. It's just an opinion. I'm not putting it in concrete and stone and all that other stuff. It's just the way I feel. It's just the way I feel. So anyways, let's go ahead and look at the last article and then we'll get into your question, Charlton. I see it popping up there. Da, 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 da. Here we go. Mortgage rates dropped to 6.27 as tariffs and shutdown cloud the outlook. I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but some people are very afraid of what's happening in the housing market because of the government shutdown. So Freddie Mac mortgage rates October 16th of 2025. The Freddie Mac 30-year mortgage rate declined to 3 basis points to 6.27 this week as investors continue to assess developments in the new tariffs on China. Meanwhile, the government shutdown has entered its 16th day, creating an economic data drought. On Tuesday, Jerome Powell expressed concern about the downside risks in the labor market, but also warned that the slow pass-through of tariffs could begin to resemble persistent inflation. Still, Powell noted that the risks become more balanced monetarily policy should, hold on. I got 1 second. I got to do this on TikTok really quick. I got to move the puzzle piece. All right, sorry. Still, Powell noted that the risks become harder, more balanced monetary policy should gradually move toward a more neutral stance, hitting at the possibility of future rate cuts. While CPI data is expected to be released before October, the FOMC meeting, even if the shutdown continues, the prolonged disruption could further complicate the Fed's decision making it by delay of another key in economic reports. But here's the thing, like if you guys know, whenever the jobs market goes to crap, they end up cutting the rate. So if the jobs market's numbers, and they can get numbers not just from the federal government, they get numbers from everywhere, and they can see that. I mean, they're the Fed. It'll be interesting. Do you think that he's going to cut the rate next time they meet? Give me your opinion. It is coming down. It is coming down. How low do you think it will go? I always thought it was going to go up. I thought it was going to be in the 8s by the end of this year, but Kristina was wrong. Well, mortgage rates are approaching their lower end of 6%. Recent data shows that home purchase sentiment remains flat. Nationwide buying power has declined sharply as home prices and mortgage rates continue to outpace income growth. As a result, substantial wage gains and improved financial stability will be essential to boost purchase sentiment. However, broader uncertainty from ongoing government shutdown may further weigh on sentiment, especially in markets with higher share of federal workers and contractors. I didn't think of that, who are facing financial strain and concerns of over potential layoffs. The thing is, if you happen to live in an area and you are a federal worker, you might be able to make a deal or some kind of see if you can do some kind of forbearance with your mortgage company. Because believe it or not, shockingly enough, they realize the banks hate having to go through the foreclosure process. Some states takes forever for it to actually foreclose and for them to get their money back. So if they know that you happen to be in a situation where you are a federal worker and you call them up and say, hey, can we, do some kind of forbearance? Can we do something to restructure the loan? a lot of times they'll work with you. I'm not saying all the time, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Don't let it get so behind that there's no way of turning back. Call and ask if you're having this situation and you can't make your mortgage payments, if there's something you can do so you don't lose your house. Because honestly, the banks actually hate dealing with foreclosures. It sucks for them. It costs them money. So work with them. Work with them. I wanted to point that out there. I didn't even think about the federal workers, because they're like, I'm sure there's like tons in around Washington and Maryland and all of that area. Eddie, scroll down a bit, please, my love. How low do you think they're going to go, though? Was that the end of the article? That was the end of the article. Never mind. How low do you think they're going to go? Because I don't know. If the interest rates get below 6, I think people are going to start going crazy, because a lot of younger people are actually borrowing money from their parents, or their parents are gifting them money to buy houses. So I don't know. It might work. Something that was weird. Something under my desk like popped, like there was an animal in here. It wouldn't surprise me. Charlton says, Kristina, you still want to come to Pennsylvania? We here have no state budget and property taxes will climb. Yes, I still want to come to Pennsylvania. I do. I can't be hot anymore. The South is so hot. And I have to tell you, whenever you look at one state and they're like, oh, we don't have any state tax. What they don't have in state tax, they have in property tax. Texas used to be a perfect example of, a place that was, has no tax and it was very affordable to live. Now the home prices have climbed so incredibly high. The property taxes they're shocking. I think they're actually more than California now, believe it or not. So it's kind of like it's like 6 on one side and half a dozen on the other. What you trade off in one state, you're going to end up paying in the same thing in the other state. It was like when I moved from Florida to Louisiana, people were like, oh, you're now paying state tax. You're really going to get screwed. And then in the long run, it was exactly the same, because I ended up saving so much money on other things. And it actually worked out for me. I got a bigger house for less money and I was paying the same amount. So it was a win-win-win for us when we moved to Louisiana. I know that this is going to be an adjustment for my family as far as financially, but I do think it's the best decision for all of us. I'm very excited because I'm really tired of being hot. It's so hot here.
Hey, Ashley XO, before you go to that next statement, Ashley XO Fashions on TikTok says, I'm in Maryland. I bought a house last year and I'm waiting for it to drop to refinance. I'm assuming rates.
Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of people are doing the rate drop wait game, because a lot of lenders, and anybody that's watched these live streams for a period of time, one of the things that I hated a couple of years ago when the rates started going up is that you saw real estate agents and home lenders and even appraisers say, date the rate and marry the house, because they were trying to encourage people to continue to buy even though the interest rates were going up. Because what they said was, hey, don't worry about it, even though the interest rates are going up, they'll come down again. Get the house that you want, because home prices continue to climb, and in 5 years you can refinance. Some people were like holding on to the hope of doing this because they got talked into it. And now here we are 3 years later, their insurance has gone up, their taxes have gone up, all of the things that living has gotten more expensive. And the thing that was promised to them because they dated the rate and married the house didn't come to fruition. And now, even if they were to refinance, it would cost them a lot even more. It would cost them even more. And you have to be very careful when someone is giving you a financial advice through a meme. I couldn't stand when people kept saying it, because it was just incredibly tacky. Yeah, just be very careful. Make sure it's within your budget. If you can, try to get your your taxes and your home insurance, instead of doing it through an escrow payment, try to pay them yourself. So that way you can always keep an eye on it, and it won't be difficult for you to change insurance companies. That's what I've been doing for the last like 20 years. Made sure that I put enough money down so I could separate my mortgage and my taxes so I could keep an eye on it. Because those escrow accounts, I don't know, sometimes I feel like with some of these banks are pretty sneaky. They're a little slick, a little stealing a little bit of money, a little putting money off to the side. You got to keep an eye on everything now. Nobody's in it for the best interest of you, that's for sure. All right, Leanna Law says, stock markets are ran on backs of children. Don't do it. All right, Tom says, rate cut will be at 0.25% next meeting. That's what I guessed the last one. And he goes, oh, they cut the rate. I said 0.25%. He's like, yeah. I was like, told you. Yep. Yes, 5.5. Is that what you think? Yeah. Erica says they're going to get you no matter what. Isn't that the truth? I used to think my mom was like so over dramatic. You know, I'm like, she's like, there, no matter what, there's somebody's going to try to get their hand in your pocketbook. And I'm like, oh, Mom, I was like, always like, ugh. And now I'm like older and I'm like, she's not wrong. My kids are not nearly as naive as I was. That's for sure. They are growing up in a completely different world, and their eyes are wide open. They show me stuff and I'm like, damn. I feel stupid half the time. You know, like I feel dumb because of some of the stuff they show me. I'm like, wow, I had no idea. Jack says they need to go a quarter or a half a point, then lower than the incremental lower for about 1 to 2 years. So you think they need to go a quarter or half lower than the increment? Do you think so? Kristina, wrong. Now what? I'm getting my real estate info here. Charlton, I love you. You can call me wrong anytime you want to. I'm not the knower of all. I tell you all the time, you know, don't just listen to me. Who am I? I'm just a stupid girl on YouTube talking about real estate with you, you know? Listen to a bunch of different people. Get a lot of different opinions. There's a million of them out there. If you ever need an opinion, just go on YouTube. There's a million people that are willing to give you their opinion about all sorts of things. And you can determine for yourself who's, you know, what you want and what you understand. Look into stuff. Man, I don't know how many times I heard something. I'm like, that isn't real. And then I start looking it up and I'm like, oh, whoops, that is real. But when I got into the affordable housing space and I had, you know, sunshine in my eyes thinking I'm going to help save the universe with affordable housing, you know, like get people into homes that can afford them. Like it's a rotten apple. There's so many people that either build homes or have projects and they're looking for government funding. Maybe they're never, ever, ever going to build a house. It's gross. It's gross. I realize money makes people horrible human beings. And the more that they want that money and the way that they deceive others to get that money is disgusting. And I guess if there was one dream I could, like instantaneous thing to get rid of would be greed. You know, if there was one thing I could erase from the universe would be greed, I guess. I don't know. I have to think on that a little bit more, but I think about that a lot because the greed makes people awful. And you should see the predatory lending practices they have for people that live in mobile homes. It's terrible. I showed this before, how some of the biggest names in mobile homes, the lenders, what they do to get people into houses, they don't care because they're looking to get in. They don't care who they're selling a house to. They just want to get that commission check. They don't care that they can't afford it. They don't care that like they're going to be making people homeless by doing it. And they get them in there and says, oh, don't worry about it. That will be taken care of. That will be taken care of. And then these people get a house they can't even afford. And then it gets foreclosed within like 6 months. The people that set them up in the first place. And then the underwriting department in those big mobile home parks allowed for it to happen. Nope. Don't do it.
Hey, so Ashley XO Fashions on TikTok says, we didn't have much choice in insurance company because we live in the peninsula around water, but we thought it was a great time to buy last year because there was no competition. We had about 100,000 in cash saved where no one else did in our area.
No, I mean, I get when people find a good deal on a house, of course you're gonna find that deal and take yourself up on that. Who knew? I mean, there was no way for us to know that insurance companies were going to go up as so incredibly high on their insurance premiums. People that have a roof that's 10 years old, even though the house says that it's like a 50-year-old roof, the insurance companies do not care. They're like, oh no, you need a special rider now, And if you happen to live in an area that does get hurricanes or inclement weather, your insurance rates have skyrocketed. Anybody that lives in like Houston, the lower part of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, all the way through Florida, it's alarming. Ours tripled. Our insurance premiums have tripled in less than 5 years. Ridiculous. And oh, by the way, all of these insurance companies are making record profits. So don't say it's because they have to make money. They're making record profits. All right. Polite correction. Money is not evil. No one could give you money to make you evil. Evil people exploit every loophole they can. Money is just one way they do it. Amen. Amen. Where's Kristina moving to? Somewhere in Pennsylvania. I haven't made a decision, but somewhere in Pennsylvania. Very excited. My parents aren't excited, but they're coming with me. My plan is to buy a duplex or two houses next to each other so I can be right with my parents. My parents are in their 80s, and I want to keep an eye on them. It's just more convenient for us to be very close to one another to help take care of my parents. I would never in a million years put my parents in a home, but they're not even at that situation. They're not even, their health concerns are not at that point. We're at a point where we can live right next to each other and help take care of each other with groceries and errands and doctor's appointments if we live right next door to each other. So that's my plan. Very excited. Helen says, I unfortunately had to take a pay cut. We are still seeing a domino effect of the federal budget cuts. I don't think I can buy a house anymore. Now I need to find a sugar daddy. Ugh. I pray that you come into a windfall of money, that you don't have to depend on anybody else. That's what I hope for you. Thomas says, convince corporations to allow remote workers, and then people can afford to buy a home. In Iowa, and earn a fair wage by remote work. This is true. And I think that corporations, once, COVID happened and they saw how people had so much more time to do things and they didn't have the evil eye watching them, they begged them to come back. People would say, oh, they wanted to come back because of commercial real estate. I don't think it was that. I think it's that they want to control every aspect of your life. Think about how many employers on the weekends demand you answer emails on Saturday and Sunday when you're supposed to be your time off, and you don't get paid for that crap. After hours, there is no after hours. Do you remember when you used to get off of work and you just get off of work and you would leave that job and you could go out and have a drink and not even think about it anymore? Now that these stupid phones are always in our hands, I mean, everything becomes an emergency when it's not even an emergency. And they're constantly calling you for stupid crap at 6:30, 7:30 at night because they want you to fix it. They have you. That's why corporations started giving people phones. Because they'd be like, oh, you could say, oh, I don't have a cell phone. Oh, here it is. Here's corporate ABC's phone. Now you have it, so we can get a hold of you all the time. We are stuck in a wheel like hamsters. It sucks.
Savas on TikTok says, my advice, stay away from Philly.
Oh, well, the only reason I'd be going to Philly is to get a cheesesteak, and that's about it. So... Yeah. The poll results are in. So the question was on the poll on YouTube. It said, do you think the Fed is making the housing crisis worse? 47% of you say they're both making it worse. They caused it and they can't fix it. 31% said yes, they went way too far. And 22% said, well, they're just doing their job. So I'm on the scale with everybody else. So 47% of you, they went too far. They know they caused the problem, and there's not much they can do about it now. So anyways, all right, everybody, if you have any, go ahead.
Ashley XO Fashions, one last thing on TikTok, said, yes, I have an on-call job, and it's never anything important when people call me.
Those on-call jobs, man. It's always an emergency, but it's never an emergency. It's like, oh, I need you to get that report over right to me. And you're like, I just sent it 2 days ago. If you just check your email, I looked. So you know what I do whenever they do stuff like this is I send them the same exact email that had the original attachment to it. And I'm like, per the email I sent on Friday, the attachment is still there. And then I'm like, then they'll say, oh, I didn't see this, or, oh, it was in my spam folder. No, it wasn't. It was not. You didn't look. Everything's an emergency to you, Jan. Anyways. If you want to get a hold of me this week and you need any real estate advice, you can always go to my website and fill out one of the pink forms. I will be happy to help you. The website is KristinaSmallhorn.com. Just pick a pink button, click on it, fill out the form, and I will get back to you at my earliest convenience. If you would like to listen to this as a podcast or share it with your friends and family, you can go to anywhere you listen to podcasts. Look for Kristina Smallhorn, Real Estate for Everyone. This episode will be on Monday. Eddie will put it up on the old YouTubes on Monday and on all the other places you listen to podcasts. Until then, everybody, if you have any questions, just put them in the comment section. If there's something you would like me to talk about next week, and we can talk about it, again, put it in the comment section. Make sure you tag me. I look forward to hearing what you want to hear about. Sometimes it's hard to come up with some of these topics, but I love you. I mean it. And I hope to see you next Sunday. Mwah, 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 mwah. Eddie, go ahead and roll that footage.
And make sure to leave a 5-star review and comment on those podcasts.
Eddie, you can't help yourself, can you?